Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for Mars Survivals. In this case, preparedness getting started. This is continuing with where we left with the preparedness and paranoia video. Before that, I'm going to be showing you something, a little project that I'm working on. It's a little kit I started doing it for myself, then decided to buy some more stuff so as to put a couple more together. Yeah, a little sneak peek. Gonna be giving one of these away if you're subscribed. I'm gonna be doing that in another video covering this stuff more. Gonna be selling a couple of these as well. Just basically for the cost of what it costs putting these things together. But keep that in mind. I'm gonna be doing that in some other case. In this case right now, it's preparedness getting started. And the first thing to do, as mentioned in the previous video about preparedness and paranoia, is making a realistic risk assessment. Why is this important? And guys, this is going to be a longer video, I know it, because it's the third time that I start doing it, and I can't even get past the title with less than 10 minutes. Going to be trying to make it shorter, but it's one of those longer videos. There's no way around that, so by now I've basically accepted that. It's impossible to do one of the standard 5-minute videos of YouTube and cover this type of thing in the depthness that it's required. Right? It's just impossible to do so. Why is it important to get started with a realistic risk assessment? Because it helps you focus. If you are getting started, if you've been watching videos, gathering information, and haven't actually done anything in terms of getting prepared, this is going to be a great video for you. Please have the patience and go for it. If you're already started and you kind of lose focus and don't know exactly what to do with your most valuable resources, which are time and money, then this is going to be good for you as well, because it's going to be helping you focus on that. There's so much information online and on TV, and so much of that is not actually great information. It's basically in the last few years, survival and preparedness has become mainstream media stuff. And in many cases, it's just entertainment. You just turn on the TV, you have the cable channels, and it's survival this, survival that, preppers, end of the world, whatever crap. It's in many cases it has nothing to do with realistic preparedness. It's just entertainment. It has to be fast-paced, image appealing. This time a TV producer, they asked me, what would we see if you go to your house? I was still in Argentina then, and this TV producer for a well-known survival preparedness type of program said, what would be the most surprising and eye-catching thing that we would see if we go to your place? And my reply was, you would be surprised by how normal and tastefully decorated my house is. You won't find anything weird, crazy, or anything like that. That's exactly what they wanted. They wanted someone who would bring out guns and say, yeah, I would be shooting people like this and that, and when the zombies come and they have all this, show them all the food and all this stuff, and yeah, that's exactly what they want, because that's the thing that's eye-catching. For someone doing a TV program, it has to be something fast-paced that keeps people hooked and not changing the channel. So is that realistic preparedness? No, in many cases it's very boring. All right, it's very boring to cover all this stuff, and it's not good TV material. It just appeals to a smaller segment of people that just want to have the realistic information regarding this. So doing this risk assessment is going to be helping you towards that. Then there's a problem of the fear, the doom and fear mongers. In many cases, I identified a few good examples. In some cases, it's just people that just like doom and gloom. They just love the stuff. They live for that. They cannot live happily. They have to be depressed all day long. That's, of course, awful, because not only are you missing on the great stuff in life, you're also not preparing very well. I can tell you I can tell you 100% certain about this. If you are the type of guy that gets depressed very easily, you are not going to be getting through 99% of this stuff if it ever happens to you for real. Right? One of the keys about surviving, in my experience, it's been related mostly to socioeconomic collapse, because that's what I saw in my years in Argentina until very recently. I can tell you with complete certainty that if you are the type of guy that gets depressed easily and starts seeing all the negative stuff, you are not going to be making it. That's one of the things that I can pretty much assure you. If you cannot laugh at yourself, if you cannot see the glass half full instead of half empty, when something like this happens, when a social economic collapse happens, the glass is not just half empty. The glass is this full, right? It's not half empty anymore. That would be great. Half empty would be great. You have just that little bit of good stuff going on. You know, you see that your family, your kids, that's the greatest thing that's happening to you, because everything else sucks so much. Whatever job you have, it probably sucks. You're not making good money. You're afraid of your own safety and all that stuff. Life becomes very hard. And if you don't learn to appreciate the little good things you have going on during very hard times, such as these ones, then you're not a survivalist, you're not a prepper, you're not anything. You are a fear-mongerer that you just have to be thankful that you're not seeing any of this stuff going on, because this would just kill you in a matter of days. If you're the kind of guy that it goes freaking out for every little thing that's going on, you know, every little rumor that you see, you make a world out of it and you freak out because of that. When things get bad for real, you're not going to be able to take it. You're not going to be able to tolerate that kind of thing. Then you have guys that profit from this stuff, right? People that do a business out of scaring you and saying, okay, now you need this to survive. Now you're going to be needing this if you want to live and not die next week or next month or next year. And it would be like me saying, yeah, I have this little survival kit. If you don't buy this from me, you're going to be dying next week. That kind of thing. And that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but it's almost along those lines. Surprising how people don't see that going on. You know, if people always coming up with the next scare because of the economic collapse in the 80s, because of 2000 year 2Y and your toaster, as in The Simpsons, your toaster freaking out and gaining life on its own and killing you. There's always a way of scaring people. You know, some people just go for that. And I just find that to be a very poor moral value. You know, if you have to do that for a living, I think that's quite awful. If you know, I have to be, well, run from the cities. You have to escape from the cities right now, because when the end of the world comes, they're going to be burning down and such. And well, you have to go to a retreat in this area. And I happen to have a great real estate agent, a good broker friend of mine, that he's going to be giving me a nice cut on it. But you have to go there, because if not, you're going to be dying. You know, I don't agree with that sort of thing. I agree with sharing what it is that, in my case, sharing my own personal experience, and most of all the information that I've gathered from other people's real world experience as well, which is something that you should be doing as well. Don't go for fantasies. Go for real world stuff. There's plenty of that going on. There's this guy, I showed a little book some time ago about the Sarajevo Survival Manual. A little book was great. I have it around here. I did a video about that. There's a guy called Selko. He does a blog, and he shares information of how he got by during the time of the siege of Sarajevo. That's the kind of stuff that you should be concentrating on. And are you going to be using that for scare and thinking that you're in New York and you're going to be sieged in New York like it happened in Sarajevo? No, you're going to be taking that as information and using that into your own realistic grid, right? It is real world information, so it's important. Now, how relevant is that to you? A guy that got lost in a mountain and managed to survive for a week without food, water, whatever, that's also real world information. It's of extreme value. Where does that apply to you? How are your chances of that happening to you? Gonna be going over that in a second. Just, you know, what is it, like 10 minutes already, didn't even get started. Again, on our previous video, it was preparedness and paranoia, how you fight that by keeping it real. How do you keep it real? By doing this double column list that I have here, which is, one has the more probable events that are gonna be affecting you sooner or later, right? Sooner or later, this is going to be affecting you. And the ones that are maybe less likely but would have a greater impact on your life as well. And this is just, this is just an example. And this list is going to be different for all of you, depending on where you are and what's your own situation, right? But all things considered, this would be what your list would be looking like. On your first list, on the left, one of the priorities on the top of the list for most of us, I mean for all of us, is going to be sickness and health problems. Are you going to be suffering some of these eventually? Are you going to be getting old? Right? Maybe, I mean, I'm 33 right now. I'm not that old yet, though I feel a bit older than usual, kind of tired. But I'm going to be 40, 50, hopefully I'm going to be 80 years old one day. How I'm going to be getting by then, when I'm not as strong as I'm now, when I'm not, when I don't have the physical resources, maybe not the financial resources, maybe I have to find other alternatives, you know. What is it that my life is going to be looking like in 10, 20, 30 years from now for me, right? That's the sort of thing that you have to keep in mind. Are you going to be getting sick? Well, pretty much, yeah. You're pretty much assured that this is going to be happening to you, right? All sorts of diseases that affect your life. It's a personal hit-the-fan event of astronomical proportions, right? If you have a very sick family member, someone dying on you, a loved one dying, those are things that, even though they're not going to be doing a TV show on that, it happens every single day to millions of people across the world. And it has as much impact or even more impact than the rioting and the looting that you may see in one place or another. You know, I've got tired of seeing looting and rioting. It became boring at a point. And you know what? I couldn't have cared less. I could eat a burger while watching. I actually did that. Eat a burger at McDonald's with a colleague of mine while people were rioting and burning crap up in the streets right in front of us. You know, that makes great TV stuff that's not nearly as bad as having someone with a serious disease back home. Loss of liberty, rights, life quality degradation. Is this probable? Could this be happening? It's happening right now. It's happening right now in most places. Right, you're seeing it very clearly with the different decisions made by politicians across the world where freedom and liberty are being restricted more and more. What is it that you can do? And what is it that you can do about this stuff, about the first one? Well, you can start working out a bit more, watching your weight, watching your blood pressure, taking a blood test, going to the gym a couple times a week or 3 times a week or whatever, having a first aid kit at home, getting more information if you have a history of cancer in your family. Which are the foods that help you towards that, improving your odds of not suffering yourself? If you have any other known type of disease, if you have high blood pressure in your family, would you be better off eating with less salt? You know, that's the kind of little thing that you're not going to be seeing it on a TV show, but maybe dropping the amount of salt that you use in food right now is by far the greatest thing you can do to improve your survival odds in the future and the quality of life that you have in the future. That little decision that is so unfancy and uncool as it is. Loss of liberty and rights, the loss of the quality of life that we are suffering all over the world. What is it that you can do? You can get involved with the different politics that are going on at a local level. You know, are you participating in rallies? Are you making your part? Have you found someone that represents? And they are out there. In many cases, they are out there. In some cases, they are not. In my country, in Argentina, there really wasn't any politician that was offering what I would have considered the type of politics that I would have supported myself. There was no Ron Paul in Argentina. I don't think there's going to be one anytime soon. Now, if you have that type of guy in your country, and if you are of that type of political affiliation, by all means, do what you can to support that kind of thing. It's not just surviving, it's also living. And the way you live and the quality of life that you have is so important. I can relate myself to 40 million people living in Argentina. I don't want to be one of them. I don't want to live my life that way anymore. I got tired of it. I got tired of being scared, being worried of... I mean, I look at the newspaper online right now and I see what's going on with all the strikes, with the country falling apart, the politicians of the country of Argentina doing a mess with their neighbors. I mean, I read the Clarín newspaper today, and you basically feel ashamed of many of the things going on there. They made this mess right now with the Brazilian government. The inflation has gone up 9% in July. It's so unstable and so freaking insane to live there. I've known it because I've lived there myself, and I still understand that there's 40 million people that live there, and they're going to be living there their entire lives, right? They're going to be surviving quite well. Now, what is it, the kind of life, the quality of life that they have over there? And this is where that kicks in. Loss of liberty and rights, and the quality of life that you're having. If you don't fighting for the quality of life and your rights and your liberty is just as important as fighting for your survival. And one day, both things may be actually the same. Right? If you leave a police state grow out of proportion, you may one day be fighting for your actual physical survival because you failed here, right? Because you failed here, you end up with some of these, all right? So that's important as well, and it's top of the list priority. Doing stuff at a political local level, talking with people, being involved, and spreading the truthful message that you hold dear. Homework car accidents, the type of stuff that happens to all of us eventually. Accidents, your kid falling from the stairs like it happened to my kid just a couple of days, getting cuts, getting car accidents of some sort. Do you have a first aid kit? Do you have some basic first aid knowledge? Do you know how to do proper CPR? Do you know the latest techniques to use, which have changed a bit in the last few years? This is the type of stuff that happens to all of us eventually. Job loss and inflation. Job loss, I mean, how huge is this? What are the chances of you fighting the zombies, or fighting the aliens invading, or the UN going nuts on you and invading US and forcing everyone to be socialists? What are the chances of that compared to the chances of you losing your job and finding yourself without a job for 6 months? Losing your source of income and just having to get by with whatever it is that you have, whatever nest egg you have in terms of money saved, in terms of food stored in case this happens. Important as well, this, which is devastating Argentina right now, the inflation. You may have a job, but inflation may be so great that your purchasing power is going down. This is something that I believe is going to be happening eventually in most places. It's happening in US right now. It is out of control and out of proportion in Argentina already. It's probably when it gets that bad that you see it for real. Maybe when inflation goes up 1-2% and such, it's not that huge. But this is, again, things that have happened to me and I've experienced them. You go to a supermarket one day, you fill up the cart, and you end up spending 50% more than just a few months ago. Eventually you realize that that shopping cart is getting more empty, right? When you have less stuff, with the same amount of money you're making, you're just filling less of that. The little glass with less little things, right? When that happens, it's all over again. Loss of quality of life. Many of these are interconnected one with the other, all right? Some of the key ones, like the social degradation, inflation, job loss, this sort of thing affects many at the same time. When you have this happening, when you have inflation going on, you end up having more poverty. That's basically what inflation is about. When inflation goes up 10, 20%, it just means that in the social pyramid, right, we have, in a good country, you have a very strong, well, it's actually, this is the typical social pyramid, top, middle, and low. In a good, solid country, you have a very thick, very strong middle class. This is what makes a country great. A strong middle class, and you have the possibility of maybe even making more money, and the guys from the lower section have the possibility of going up one and the other. In poor countries, what happens is that you have a very big poor sector, a very small middle class, and a very powerful, very rich elite on the top. Unfortunately, this is in many ways what some countries want for many of us in the future. Unfortunately, I think it's that way. I think that the top elite, the richest guys in the world, have figured it out that through politics they're managing to get even richer, have even more power, and unfortunately that means that more of us are going to be becoming poor. You have to understand that so as to fight it in all the possible ways that you have. Right. When this happens, when inflation happens, it simply means that there's going to be more poor people. More poor people, even though there are exceptions and such, but this is pretty much a given. The more inflation that you have and the more poverty you have, the more crime you have. Right. Someone will be saying, well, in China everyone is poor and there's no crime. Well, in China they live in a communist state where they don't have any freedom at all. They don't have any liberty of press. So you basically don't know really what's going on. Okay, so bringing up the example of China as an example of poverty not equaling poverty, poverty not equaling crime, that's actually a pretty poor example, because since there's no freedom of speech whatsoever and there's no realistic statistics, it's all a big blur and you cannot have a real assessment of what's going on. In general, for most societies, more poverty means more crime, and that's something that you should be knowing about. Crime and violence. Well, since this is already happening in many levels, this is going to be happening even more. Crime and violence is going to be going up. All right. And what is your list of priorities? Are these more likely to happen? By all means. Is this possible? Of course it is. All right. Then we go to our other side of our little list. War. Has this happened before? The question that I was making reference to on the preparedness and paranoia video. War, yes, it has happened before. It is still happening today, many places of the world. Social economic collapse. Is it possible? Well, yeah, it happened to us in Argentina. It happens to people in other parts of the world as well. And unfortunately, it's becoming very, very common these days. Things are not looking great currently in Europe and many places of Europe. Thankfully, I'm in a good part of Europe that is. I came here precisely because they didn't have the euro, which is dragging many countries into serious economic problems. But the world in general, guys, today it is quite complicated. The economic recession and the economic crisis as today is pretty much what's going on. You may find countries that are a bit better off and such, and that's great. It's better if you are in one of them. But it is a possibility. It's like something that is happening right now. Earthquakes, floods, wildfires, tornadoes, the type of natural disasters that happen sometimes. This is one of those things that's going to be strongly linked to your location. If you live in a place where this is a possibility, then you cannot ignore this in your risk assessment. Right? You cannot ignore that you live in a place that there has been a history of flooding, of earthquakes. Right now in Colorado, I call a friend of mine because I was worried. Wildfires in Colorado. That's happening right now. Right? What is it that you do so as to prepare for that? You make certain plans. You have certain amount of gear. Do you have a go bag ready? I was talking with my friend last night actually. He's in Colorado. He's fine. So that's good, but he's in Colorado and they have the fires going on. Do people have their bags, an emergency survival bag ready to go with not a ton of guns and ammunition, but maybe a self-defense weapon, but mostly the important documents that you need to run in the last minutes? Guys, think about this for a second. If you have to actually run for your life because of a wildfire, will you be able to drag along with you 20 pounds of guns and ammo? Probably not the best idea. Probably better to make sure the kids, you're able to carry one if they get hurt. Maybe you have a teenage kid. You have a 14-year-old and you think, well, this kid is perfectly able of running on its own and he's taking his own pack. What if someone sets foot wrong and it hurts a knee and you have to carry someone to save them? Is that going to be the minute when you realize that a ton of firearms are not going to be helping you, and you start separating the valuable documents and your money and your other credentials that you need, and so as to be able to carry your kid in that minute? Well, that's actually poor preparation. If you're planning on this, you have a very small, compact, basic kit which you can just grab and go when that's all you can have with you. Earthquakes, do you know how to do it? Do you have a proper plan so as to leave the building that you are in? Do you have a point where you're going to be meeting with your family? All right. Have you already arranged with your wife and your kids, if we lose communications and we have to meet, we're going to be meeting here in this place, and if I'm not there, then I'm in this other place over here, or if I'm not here, I'm going to be at our parents' house in the next state or wherever. You have those preparations ahead of time. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing when this happens. Are you going to be sticking around if this happens? I mean, when the earthquake hit Chile not that long ago, it was pretty bad, and I had my cousin. She was there, and it wasn't just the earthquake. The ground kept shaking for months after that. People actually decided to leave. They just couldn't cope with that. They just couldn't deal with that, and they had to leave, relocate somewhere else. Right? I'm gonna be going through all this again and seeing how all this stuff interconnects. Right? Terrorist attacks. Is this possible? In some cases, it's more likely than in others. If you live in a major city, then those are, in most cases, those are the favorite targets by terrorists. Hurting and scaring the greatest amount of people possible. So, if you live in a major city, London, New York, LA, places like that, places with millions of people, especially given current times as they are right now, these things could happen. Are they as likely to happen as you getting sick? No, no, it's not. It's not nearly as likely. Is it as likely to happen compared to you suffering a typical house or work accident, or you having a problem with your vehicle? Maybe you live in a part of the world where winters are very bad, and this may actually kill you if you haven't planned properly. How likely is that in comparison to your town being hit by terrorists? It may depend on, if you live in a 20,000 population town, chances of a terrorist attack going on there are not very likely. Yet you have to keep other considerations in mind. If you live downwind from a major urban setting where it may be attacked, maybe used by a dirty bomb, a chemical attack of any sort, and wind is taking that down to your location, is that possible? And closely linked to that, maybe it's not made on purpose, as in a terrorist attack. Maybe it's just a freak accident, an industrial chemical disaster of some sort, nuclear power plants going down. Which, again, how are the chances of nuclear power plants, guys? Are the most advanced, most high security things ever made by mankind. Those are nuclear power plants. It happens so much often in other chemical spills, other chemical disasters with industrial plants than with nuclear power plants. The thing is that the nuclear power plants we are affected by the fantasy, by the propaganda, by the media, by the TV, the movies, Hollywood. We basically believe that nuclear power plants are always about to blow up in the air, when realistically, if you look at it, so much likely, and it happens so much more often, of industrial and chemical spills. These are actually the ones that you should be concerned about the most. Religious and ethnic persecution. Is this happening today? Yes, it is. Has it happened in the past? Yes. Are you of any ethnical or religious group that will not be affected? No. There's just no single ethnic or religious group that hasn't been persecuted at some point in history somewhere. Right now it's happening. People of different religious groups or ethnical backgrounds being persecuted today, right now, as we're talking. No matter what your color is, no matter what God you pray to, you may be a victim of this one day. It's just a fact. It's just what it is. How are the chances of that happening? Not so much, especially depending on where you are, what part of the world. But it has happened. So it has happened before, and it's still happening today in many places. There's no reason why you should be ignoring this, because it could happen again. Now, having all this kept in mind, in almost exactly 30 minutes right now, we're going to be trying to link these with one another. And I'm not going to be going through all details, but let's just try to see what it is that, okay, we talked about it right now. What is that you can actually do so as to get ready for all this stuff, all right? Let's talk about this. Sickness, health. We said we could work out, eat less, watch our weight, which, maybe you are thin, you're fit, and this isn't applying to you. But for most people, this is it. Most people have a sedentary lifestyle. They spend all day in the office and they eat lots of stuff that isn't very good for them. Doing this is going to be helping. All right. Now let's try to see, since this is going to be one of your top priorities, let's see how you can link this with something else. If you're going to be working out, going to be going to a gym, picking up a sport, whatever, maybe you want to be doing a little bit of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and kickboxing or Thai boxing, which is also going to be helping you towards having means of defending yourself, right? Yeah, you will have to learn how to use a firearm as well and such. But since you're doing this already, you might as well cover other bases. If we think about earthquakes, floods, natural disasters, and in this case it's important to be fit and capable of running, capable of doing physical labor, being strong so as to pick debris out of you, climb your way out of trouble, run, right? If there's social unrest, right? Social unrest. You know what's the best thing to do when you have this going on? When you see rioting on the street, people, gonna be doing my little drawings right now. You have the city, you have a mob coming this way. The mob with smoke, burning, torching everything. You have cars over here, a car here and such. You're standing here and the mob is coming your way. What is it that you should be doing? You should be going the opposite direction as fast as possible. Running and walking fast away from problems, physical threats, all right, of any kind. If it's a rioting or mob, if it's a flooding, earthquake. We saw it on the footage from Japan, the guys running from the waves coming in their direction. This is strongly linked to your capability of doing physical labor, of running, walking fast, carrying weight. So this is directly linked. Terrorist attack. You have to leave, you have to evacuate on foot, maybe carry one of your kids, maybe carry a loved one. Are you able to pick someone that is of your same weight and carrying? That's not easy, guys. I mean, I know that. Have you actually done that? Picked up a grown adult and carried him over your shoulders? Last time I did that, and we were doing it in a shooting class with all the gear and such. Just a few meters at most. What is it? 30, 40, 50 meters carrying someone. If you can carry someone of your own same weight, you're an adult, and you can carry another adult for 50 meters, you're in frequently good physical condition. Right? Well, let's not talk about being so good at it. Let's maybe talk about a kid. Yeah, I have a 10-year-old. Could I carry him? Yes. Could I carry my 3-year-old? He's almost 4 now. Could I carry my 4-year-old? Yes. Yes, I can. We went to a little trip not that long ago with some friends here, and I had my little backpack with me. My son, he was tired. The little one was tired. I carried him for maybe a mile or so. Could I have kept carrying him for some more distance? Yes, I could, right? So you have to do this and actually know your limitations. How far could you carry someone? How much weight could you carry on your back? And it all works with one another. It's about being in better physical shape, eating a bit less, losing some weight. It's going to be helping you in many of these other things as well. It may not seem that way, but a good body and a good mind is also going to be working towards being better prepared for this as well. If you feel well, if you're feeling well, then you're thinking well as well, and you're able to do more things in terms of the mental aspect of being prepared for job loss. If you have a better attitude, you're more likely to find another job as well, start something else, start maybe your own company, something of your own, creating your own source of income. All right, if you are in good shape and you do a bit of workout, you're feeling well, you are positive about this sort of thing. Again, going back to your mental preparations and seeing the glass full or half full instead of half empty, or even if you just have a little bit of water in there, you just stay positive about that. So important. Again, and this is also linked to loss of liberty, rights, networking. How is going to be helping this? Networking is going to be helping you in this point. Loss of liberty and rights and such, and degradation of life. Networking is also going to be helping you if you are involved in some, if there's a greater amount of crime going on in your neighborhood. Networking is going to be helping you, I guarantee you. If you're networking and you have friends you can trust and talk to and such, it's also going to be helping you in terms of job loss. You will have someone to call and say, hey, I just lost my job. Do you have anything going on there that I could do? Or do you know anyone that is looking for someone to hire? Networking is going to be helping you there as well. If there's any of these, and you have all these, wars, social economic collapse, earthquakes, all these involve a very huge point. Guys, I hope you're watching this, because some of this stuff lots of you sometimes don't quite get. All of this means, all of these, some of the worst stuff going on means that you may have to leave. The common bug out that it's so popular. Bug out, yeah, bug out and relocating somewhere else. If there's war, if there's a social and economic collapse and it gets really bad, that would be a good example of what I have to share in that regard. When it gets as bad as it got in Argentina, and you suddenly see your country that's no longer, we went from being a somewhat first world country, not quite one, but it was the best place to be in South America, Argentina. We went from being that to being a third world country where everything is a joke, right? When it gets that bad, it's not a matter of how much guns you have or how well prepared you are. You have to leave. At least if you're like me and have a certain standard of living that you will not sacrifice. And by this I'm not talking about money alone. All right. If I just liked to live feeling rich, I would have stayed in Argentina, because I can guarantee you I can buy more crap in Argentina than I can do here. Right? While inflation is awful and lots of prices are through the roof, if you just want to be surrounded by poverty and feel that you can buy anything and you can hire people for pennies, I would have moved to a province, a place like Cordoba, where I had lived for 2 years and already know pretty well, or other provinces. I could have bought a very nice place over in Argentina, hire a couple of maids and such, and feel like a freaking king. But that's not the life quality that I'm talking about. I'm talking about freedom in terms of walking on the street and feeling safe, knowing that no one's not going to be kidnapping you because you have a bit more money than the rest. Right? That's the type of thing that I'm talking about. There's people that love third world countries. There's people that have lots of money that love third world countries, and they would never leave those places because they feel better in them. I just don't feel well surrounded by poverty and misery. I just don't. I'm not able to do so. I cannot drive a fancy car and go into my fancy house in a fancy gated community and have the rest of the country around me falling apart, and always watching over my back, because whenever you leave those gates, you're in the jungle, right? There's people that live that way, that like doing that. I don't. Or being in a poor province where everyone's starving to death and I'm the rich guy, and taking advantage of that. That's not life quality for me. And that's, again, this changes depending on one person or another. But if you're like me, you will have to leave. If you live in a country that has fallen so much that it's no longer a good place for you, you have to leave. You don't have much of a choice there. If you have war, if you have in some cases earthquakes and such, terrorist attacks, all of these things, religious and ethical persecution, you have to leave. And it's not just about, again, the fantasy of, I have my bucket bag and I'm going to be leaving to the nearest national park and then I'm going to be going back home. Sometimes you don't have a home to go back to. Sometimes you leave and that's it. Sometimes you leave and you're never going to be going back. That's pretty hard. It's not that easy. It's not that easy to know that you're leaving and chances are you're not going to be going back. It's actually pretty hard. It's not that easy. Especially with your loved ones. If one of these happens and you're lucky enough to leave, or you decided to leave on your own as I did, or maybe you're leaving because you don't have an option and you're being chased out of it and you're never going to be going back, that's pretty hard and it's not easy. Alright, it's not about having guys, sometimes I see those bags and people have 50 pounds of gear and half of that is guns and ammunition. What the hell are you going to be doing with that? If there's war going on and you're taking your family out of that, it's more a matter of mobility and having financial resources to start over. It's not a matter of engaging with the United Nations in a one-man stand against the world. It's if there's ethnic, religious persecution, if there's a disaster area that you're evacuating, if you're thinking Katrina maybe, in those cases you just have to leave. Yes, you may have to. I mean, it's better if you have a weapon for self-defense. That's gonna be a priority. And again, this is something that you will have linked here. If you're gonna be working out and you're gonna be doing a bit of fighting sports and combat training as well, and you're throwing in there handguns as well, and this may be connected as well with networking. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you have so many things interconnected: working out, going to the gun range, networking, staying in proper physical shape, networking and talking with other people, making friends you can eventually count on. That's going to be covering so much of this. And even of this, if you are networking with people in other places, in other states, in other countries, you talk with them, you maybe leave a bag with some stuff with them, an emergency kit of whatever left with them, spare set of clothes, a bit of money, a gun, some of your copies of your personal information, your important documents in a zip drive. That little bag left in another state, even another country, that gives you the resources that lots of people will not have when any of this happens. Alright, if it ever happens, because it's in the list of stuff that is unlikely. Alright, we're talking about the more unlikely events, while here we have the more likely ones. But as you see, they're interconnected, and this realistic preparations for eventually, if things get really bad, having to leave. This is something that it's being failed so much. You just don't see this. What is it that people do? They say, I'm not going to be leaving. I'm going to be bugging in. I'll bug in. Right? I'll bug in. I'll stay running out of ink here. I'll bug in. I'll just have my reinforced house. Going to be, a bunker with a few turrets here. And I'm going to be shooting all the zombies. No, it doesn't work that way. Fantasy, reality, okay, one and another. Well, this is something that I actually read. I'm preparing for a zombie disaster. I'm preparing for the end of the world zombie stuff. And I reply, okay, that's pretty stupid. No, because I prepare for the worst possible thing, which is a zombie outburst, a zombie pandemic of some sort. I'm preparing for that. So that's preparing me for the rest of the stuff going on. No, it's not as if people think of it this way. They have the thermometer, yeah, and they have the zombie thing here, and they say, if I prepare for zombies, I'm covering all the other stuff that is less dramatic. No, you're preparing for something that isn't realistic, and your preparations in all these suck because you're not being realistic about what you're doing. You're not focusing on the things that are likely to happen, and this has nothing to do with it. All right? You actually see posts of people that they have the machete, they have the rifle, the guns, and the shotgun, because the shotgun is the best gun for zombies, of course. So they have machetes, face masks, and which is great, but for other purposes. But they focus on something that is just basically a joke, and it's the stuff you see in comic conventions, not real preparations. Real preparation is about this stuff. And bugging in, it is an option in some cases. In some cases, it's not. All right, and you cannot make the mistake of doing this. Your plan A, B, C is just staying put. You've reinforced your house, and this is going to be linked to crime and violence, which is something that I can really relate to. Having a house that is very defendable is important, is huge. All right. Having a house that it has good security measures, you have an alarm, you have good doors, you have good locks and such, very important as crime gets worse, because this is going to be linked to one another, and this is happening already. So having a good house that is defendable, that has good security measures, great. If you haven't done anything of this at all, just putting an alarm system, having a dog in your perimeter, and having good doors, that's going to be most likely sending people looking for an easier target. All right, but this does not mean that your option is always going to be bugging in. In some cases, you don't have that. You cannot make that call. My friend in Colorado, he was telling me about all these folks that lost everything because of a simple wildfire. Simple as it is, it destroys everything you've ever seen or known your entire life. If you put all your resources and all your effort in maybe in a retreat, that retreat, that homestead is all you have, and all your resources are focused on that, because bugging in is going to be plan A, B, C for you. You don't think of the possibility of leaving, and at most you have maybe a bag, a bug out bag, and that's it. But you haven't done any other preparations. That's quite not the best thing for realistic preparations. All right, financial preparations. Again, talking about inflation, job loss. The financial preparations you make are so important these days. All right. Are you saving money? Do you have, in the previous video I mentioned precious metals. Do you have some precious metals at least? Precious metals, guys. I have the guy, the precious metals sponsor. I've been talking about precious metals for a decade, right? What is it about it? It's the only way in which you basically protect some of your wealth from an economic disaster. That's why it is important, because if banks close, people, imagine for a second, if you're listening to this, imagine for a second that your bank closes right now. The money you have right now in the bank, it's gone. It's gone forever. The banks are not answering the phone. They're not opening the doors. You have nothing left in them. There's nothing there for you. It's all digital data, and suddenly gets erased or converted to something that's pretty much worthless, or it's in one way or another you losing 75% of your purchasing value, like it happened in Argentina. How would you get by if you today lose 75% of the money you have in one way or another? Or you lose 100%, which is also a possibility. Banks are going down like flies. How would you manage? If you have some money saved, all right, why precious metals? Because if something like that dramatic happens, banks close all of a sudden, there's a good possibility of that fiat currency in the country losing value very fast. And in that case, it's precious metals which is going to be giving you an edge, at least a bit of an edge, to fight that in some way. If you have, say, 20% of the money you have, if you have 20% of that in precious metals, and you end up losing everything else, at least you save that 20%. And there's a good chance that because of what's happening, the purchasing power of that same precious metal is not only going to be keeping itself, it's going to be going up and hopefully compensating for some of what you have lost. All right, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. So guys, just a bit of more information. What is it that you need, for example, here for accents? Do you have a kit at home? Do you have a kit at home that includes a first aid kit and knowing how to use it? Do you have a kit in your workplace in case something happens, terrorist attacks? Again, stuff linked to one another. A terrorist attack goes down, you're in your workplace, you have to walk your way back home. Do you have a kit there? Your house, your car is your home away from home. Your office would be, again, something like that. Do you have a kit in your home, a kit in your house, in your vehicle, and in your workplace? All right. The kits, the stuff that you see all day on the internet, having one of those in each place is going to be giving you the tools. Maybe in my kit, if I work in an office, I would include a good pair of shoes for walking, a good set of clothes so as to lose the suit and have more comfortable and more adequate clothing. Maybe something for defense as well, a bit of water, and quite a bit of water, because water is going to be a very important resource. Do you have a water bottle in that kit in your car and in your office? You have a first aid kit over there. Some food, some money in case you need it, so as to make your way back home, right? And again, what is your mentality? Are you carrying? I always talk about the EDC kits, all right? Why is that? Why is it that it's important that, I've mentioned this before, the sacred triangle of having a knife or tool or multi-tool, fire, and a LED light. These three are going to be giving you several advantages if any of these happen, and as they always occur, if it happens in the moment you least expect it, in the moment you're least prepared for that. If you have these three in your pocket, and where and when legal to do so, gun, your concealed carry license, you have your gun with you, and you have these three with you, a bit of cash, maybe a bag with an EDC bag that you've learned to carry and got used to it, with a bit of food, a bit of water in there, you're going to be so much better prepared for all this stuff in general, right? And then there's more advanced preparations. If you have to leave in a hurry, as I had to, it's not something that you can do successfully out of the blur. If you just make a run for it and go across the border, you end up in a country with no resources whatsoever. It's going to be a pretty bad situation for you. This is the kind of thing that's more advanced. But again, I just want to leave it at that. Think about it. Do you have all your resources just in one basket? You know, when we talk about the eggs, do you have all those eggs in one single basket? And if you lose that basket because of whatever, you're left with nothing. Is that your situation right now? Maybe that's some of the things that you should be keeping in mind as well. More realistic, less likely, but still possible, and on a degree of how bad it could get. Guys, long video, but lots of stuff covered. I hope you watch it, and have a bit of patience with me, because it's the only way in which I can share this stuff with you. Consider subscribing, because there's going to be more stuff coming up. I've been getting lots of good feedback. There's lots of people subscribing and liking all this stuff. There's the forum as well, the blog at themodernsurvivalist.com. Go there, because I've tried to see how many. I've written thousands of pages. My blog is not me reposting stuff from others. I don't do that. I don't have people writing for me. I write myself, maybe comment on some of the questions that I have, share something that I found that is interesting, but it is what I write. There's tons and tons of information there that I've gathered, either writing it myself or finding good stuff so as to share with you guys. It's a very good resources. themodernsurvivalist.com. The book as well that I've written with lots of this stuff, Surviving the Economic Collapse, in Amazon, the Modern Survival Manual, lots of stuff. I would have to take hours and hours to share everything that I've put into that book and do it in videos. But this is the kind of mindset and the kind of attitude and the way you should be doing, so as to have a more realistic approach, folks. All right? Take care, guys. Have a great weekend, and see you in our next video.